Ah, Batman, you cannot defeat me. You merely adopted the podcast. I was born to it.
Oh, wait, fuck, wrong movie. It's the other one. It's the good one. It's the better one. Hello, my name's David, and welcome to this week's episode of the Imaginary Movie Podcast, live from The Dark Knight. Not the third one. Not the second one. The second one. Number 2. Deuce.
Listen, he brought a glass. He has props. I mean, this is a next level of preparation and, dare I say, professionalism from the Imaginary Movie Podcast. Dave, you have elevated once again the art of watching a movie and then talking about it. It's incredible,
Sam, that this is a glass that just happened to be on my desk because of my lackluster tidying skills.
I 1000% believe it. That is something that is very believable. Very believable indeed. You absolute filthy animal. Hey, Dave. We're talking about the Dark Knight. We're talking about...
Welcome, Sam.
We're talking about Batman. That's right, bringing the mood. Batman. Hey, it's me, the Batman. And I think I'm quite interested because we are talking about the second Batman movie we've done recently. And this is like 2 good Batman movies in a row. I mean, Jesus.
I wasn't as high on Batman Begins as I thought I would be. However, I think this is the Batman movie we deserved. This is the Batman movie we needed.
We needed. It's the Batman movie we needed, deserved, and got, which was handy in the long, dark history.
We needed this in 2008, Sam. There was stuff going on, and we needed a good Batman movie.
This is an old movie, and this is how old is this movie? I mean, it's like
15 years, 16 years,
16 years old, and it feels like we've had 1,000 billion trillion years of superhero movies up until this point in 2024, and this is the foundation of them, isn't it? Like this is quite
quaint actually compared to a lot of the Marvel and DC films that came after this.
Yeah,
because this is a movie that's part of a trilogy of 3 movies, starring basically the one character, and that seems really grounded and quaint. And we aren't using this movie to springboard the 15 movies in the next phase.
Yeah.
Because which are in turn going to springboard the 35 movies in the phase after that, and exponentially on and on and on.
On and on. And the reason for that is that DC didn't have their shit together to figure it out faster than Marvel did. It's quite amazing, really, isn't it? Because we often think about the superhero throw up / innovation occurring around 2008, around this time, because you got Iron Man comes out then, Hulk came out before, but who cares?
Yeah.
But like Iron Man was the one that really cemented it and built off the MCU.
And that was 2007, maybe?
2008, like same year.
2008, same year.
But Batman Begins was in 2005. So we've already really, I think, probably cemented in. And it shows just how good this movie is, The Dark Knight, because in the way that when you look back at 2008, Iron Man's a good film, but it very much feels like a early superhero outing. This feels like if it came out today, I think this would be pretty well placed, other than a couple of things, but pretty well placed to be able to say, actually, this movie stands up. This movie stands up because this is a great movie. Like,
well, it's different from a lot of the Marvel films, and in that Christopher Nolan, who directed this movie and Batman Begins as well, and then that third one, which was fucking dog shit, but we'll get to that eventually.
Yeah, we're going to watch that. Ooh, I hope not.
I'd like to never watch that again, personally, like generally. But we'll discuss that. But Christopher Nolan's an actual, like, real-time director, real deal director. You know, he's an auteur. He's made a lot of weird movies. He's made a lot of experimental movies, I would say, kind of pushing the limits of what you can do with a narrative on screen, and he's been very successful in that. And I think that is why this movie's good. Because actually, I think that while these are very much like Batman movies, I think they're quite fast and loose with the source material in a good way, in a way that, you know, a lot of Marvel movies, a lot of those early Spider-Man movies, the X-Men movies are maybe a bit more fan servicey, whereas Nolan's Batman's never felt really concerned with having, do you know what I mean, with overly having
what it
stuff
is
for the fans.
Yeah, it's about grounding, isn't it? It's about grounding, and I think the distinction between the Fantastic Four movies, the distinction between the Spider-Man movies, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, is because I think they are comic book films, and I think this is an attempt, at least, to push it beyond a comic book movie and turn it into something that is like living in the real world. And we get the dark, gritty superheroes. We get less holy rusted metal Batman or bat nipples that we get in Batman and Robin, which was, just as a reminder, listener, 2005 Batman Begins. The movie before that was Batman and Robin. Mr. Freeze, Arnold Schwarzenegger, George Clooney. So that is the leap that we have made here. And then we go on to this movie, which I think takes all of the ingredients that were in Batman Begins, and I think refines it and settles it into, we're going to get adult, gritty, well considered, and yes, not just there to give us say the line, Bart, you know, type of thing that we get from maybe some of the other.
It's a more grown up movie than I think. I would struggle to name a superhero movie that's as grown up as this. And the genius of that is, like you said, the grounded nature of this movie. And Batman's not necessarily, he's not beating up like, you know, there's no outward reason why this movie couldn't, even compared to Batman Begins, couldn't take place in the real world. There's no magic in this movie in that way.
Which is an important,
you know, and even its departure from Batman Begins with Scarecrow and his gas and things. You'd even cut that out of it in the League of Shadows, which is obviously a little bit more larger than life. In this movie is kind of a 1990s Harrison Ford political thriller, like
which is
that happens to have Batman in it. That happens to be taking place in Gotham City, and that's where the strength of the movie lies.
And all of these things are so foundational to. I mean, obviously, Iron Man came out at the same time, so it's not influenced. But I think you see the themes, you see how we're going to move from comic book stories that feel it like big grand episodes to we're living in the world, and these characters happen to be the same names characters, but we're going to do something totally different. I mean, Heath Ledger's makeup is just the thing for me that sticks out as like, oh right, so we're not dressed up like Jack Nicholson. We're not we are ragged, and he's literally applied this in the car on the way here. Like, that's the level that we're at when it comes to
18 years after the fact. 14 years, what did we say?
16, I think.
16 years after the fact. We've got a good distance, I think, because the decade following this movie, I think, we were inundated with people dressed up in this fucking Joker outfit.
Oh my God.
And we thought it was hilarious. We thought it was the funniest thing in the world for years. 2008
was when we went to uni. How many times on like uni nights out that were vaguely fancy dress? How many Jokers would you see in a night? 20, 30,
We had one
40?
fancy dress night. I dressed as the Batman from Adam West.
Pow. Yeah.
Yeah. And then my friend Bernard dressed as the Joker, but the Dark Knight Joker. And we basically just did lines from the movie, increasingly drunk, the whole night.
Swear to me! Just that's it.
Do you know how I got these scars? And we thought it was the funniest, most original.
Not just funny, cool.
Clever.
It was cool.
Yeah.
Our cynicism about Batman in our previous episode, and I think let's not dive into it entirely, but it's worth getting into, because I think, like, once you remove the ridiculousness of Batman, and once you go, actually, the League of Shadows, like, what? And you're dressing up in, like, gimp costume and running around, is it like, this is silly, this is just like toxic masculinity, this is just, oh, I'm big guy, I'm gonna go around beating up bad guys and I'm above the law, and all of the things, this is what's beautiful, all of the things that we as cynical now 30-somethings are going, ugh, scoff. This movie says, I agree. This movie says, absolutely. And we're gonna get the Joker to come in and deconstruct all of this. You know, there's nothing you can do, you and all your strength, and you can't hurt me. You know, and I think it is absolutely fucking genius the way that they basically take all of the cringy bits of Batman and lay them all out, hang a lantern on them, and then say, yeah, this is the movie. This is the point of the movie, is that the Joker is going to attack the very thing that we think is cool.
And the clever thing about the movie is the movie realizes that and kind of doubles down on the ending of it. We can talk all over the place, obviously spoilers from 2008 Batman. But at the end of the movie, it's the realization from Batman. Batman realizes, and Gordon realizes, that, like, Batman's a fucking joke. Let's not worry about Batman. What people need is to believe that people are decent. So you have the kind of, like, we can't tell them that Harvey Dent was going around, like, shooting people in the back of the head because he was deranged and, you know, all of the rest. And it's like, no, he has to remain the symbol, and Batman has to become the bad guy, and that's more important because it's the Batman. It's like, the Batman cannot be, you know, some fucking, you know, religious symbol, and that's where I think this movie is more grown up, is it kind of realizes that, and there's a good moral back and forth throughout this movie that certainly they kind of biffed in Batman Begins. I think it's much more.
Oh, Dave, what did they do to my boy? Like, they absolutely shat it. I mean, honest to God, it's unbelievable. To be honest, we probably really should watch in a few months. I'm not interested now, but in a few months we should watch it, because I think we should complete the sequel and we can really dive in.
It's so.
I've only watched it once, though. I've only watched it once, and it was so disappointing. And I think it's because this film it reaches a height that is quite impressive. Just as a little bit about him, because I think it's interesting. Obviously, Christopher Nolan, the director, and he's someone who we are obviously madly in love with because we're generic white guys too. And I think it's like an interesting point in his career, though, because he made, following Memento, Insomnia, Batman Begins, and then he has a break between 2005 and 2008 where he makes The Prestige, which again is one of my all-time favorite movies. Fantastic movie about men doing manly things for no particular reason. But I think what you see between 2005 and this movie, you see The Prestige, and I think you see the real you see a starting point. You see something here that's almost like the beginning of this idea about the feud between these two characters and the immovable object and the unstoppable force that is Wolverine and Batman in that movie, in The Prestige. And actually, I think the same themes and the same like construct works really well, because they kind of transfer that to, okay, well, we'll adjust the feud slightly. It's not about magicians; it's about the heart of Gotham or whatever. But like, I think that movie, is really important when you're looking at where we're going, because this is the first time Nolan's done a sequel. He's been outside of the studio, like, grind them up.
He hasn't done a sequel since, has he?
I don't.
Apart from the next Batman sequel.
Yeah, so it does Dark Knight Rises, and then it's just individual films after that. So I think it's like this is almost his first. I bet he was nervous as hell going into this with his wife. I think is his co-producer, isn't it? And Emma Thomas, and I think they must have been nervous as hell going into this, thinking, how are we going to top what we did in Batman Begins?
Yeah, let's talk about. I want to talk about the plot of this movie a little bit, maybe some of the other sort of like secondary characters. Now they got a bit of luck when they made this movie because Katie Holmes was totally fine and being looked after very well by some sort of Scientology group, I'm sure by this point. And so they recast her role with Maggie Gyllenhaal, who I think is a far superior actor, who actually has a lot less to do in this movie than Katie Holmes had to do in the first movie, but does more with it.
She's I think she's in the way that Katie Holmes' character in Rachel in the first one, she's kind of the impetus for a lot of what Bruce does, isn't she? She's kind of there because Bruce wants to be, the origin story goes back to her, but she's kind of separate. She's there as she comes in for a few scenes and she disappears. Whereas in this movie, Batman, Bruce Wayne's kind of drive is because at the end she said, "Well, I'm not going to go out with Batman because that's psychotic. So when you're not Batman, then we can bang." I mean, that's the short version, and that's the kind of foundational thing because he says, we've got Harvey Dent now. It's fine. Everything's fine. We can just rely on this." And I think that does work really well when you give Maggie Gyllenhaal the emotional room to be able to bring this to bring this storyline to what I think is just an absolutely perfect culmination.
Yep, shoot her in the back of the fucking head. Oh, thank God.
My
Sam,
God.
A movie takes the definitive step to murder one of its main-ish characters to up the stakes and to kind of prove to us that this Joker isn't fucking around. And it works so well. And in the second act, really early, and in an effective way that moves the plot forward, that ramps up the emotional stakes on both with Dent and with Batman, and really serves the movie really, really well. And they definitively blow this woman up, and she's dead. And so many movies would balk at that.
Because
I mean, admittedly, you killed off the only woman in your movie, and in the one before that, not fantastic, but
well,
at least at least it's in service to the actual plot rather than just because you couldn't write any more lines for a woman. Admittedly, Christopher Nolan doesn't know that women exist, so it was bound to happen sooner or later.
At least there's a woman in the film, I think, is what Christopher Nolan is saying. He doesn't give a shit. He's not going to give a shit. Every single woman he's going to ever cast in almost any of his movies is going to be some weird. Even Oppenheimer's Kitty, Oppenheimer's wife, is just really, really underwritten and decent enough performance from Emily Blunt, but
got some good moments, but not necessarily a character that has a lot of agency in that movie.
Not just, and so I think we should consider ourselves lucky, I guess. But it is a great thing. It's a great culmination to kill her off, and it gives, I think, a real it ups the stakes, as you say. It escalates it, and it pushes us towards the kind of the final part of the movie with Dent losing his mind. I just think it's a great choice. It's a great choice, and without her and without Rachel as a character, I think what you're left with is a really kind of almost like an ideological battle between the Joker and a Batman, and that's interesting, and that's what we get in a lot of the other movies, is that I'm an evil guy and I'm a good guy, and whereas because the Joker manages to get his claws into every single aspect of this movie, he then manipulates it amazingly. The character manipulates it so that you've got
Harvey Dent
great
is the hero of this movie, both in the fictional Gotham universe and kind of in driving the plot forward, because Gordon is a fucking pig, obviously, who essentially is somewhat honest and does what Batman tells him, and that's mostly what we get from Gordon generally. Whereas Harvey Dent is an actual person who exists in this universe who like has principles and is good at his job and effective and good. And I think Eckhart's performance is very good as well. And it's kind of funny to, again, looking back on the Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher movies, of like the last time we saw Two-Face, it was Tommy Lee Jones doing a very different performance.
Yeah.
With a gang of like a West Side Story gang, basically. And whereas this is a role with pathos, I think Two-Face is much more of like a tragic figure in this movie than a villain, so to speak. Which is a very good way of doing it, because again, can't do the Spider-Man thing. We cannot have 15 villains in our movie.
You can't, because if you do, you get Spider-Man 3, and we all know how bad that is. But you're right about Eckhart, and you're right about the performance. I think more interestingly for me though is the way that they constructed the character. Obviously, being vaguely Batman adjacent, Harvey Dent, you're like, oh yeah. But I think if you went in without knowing that, you could probably you wouldn't necessarily see where they're going. You might have heard of Two-Face. You wouldn't have heard maybe of Harvey Dent as the character name. And it's quite a good reveal when it ends up, what did you call me? What did you call me in Internal Affairs? You called me Harvey Two-Face. Then, and it's a great transition. It's a great transition and a great fall from grace that you get this White Knight, as they call him, like falling into the trap, basically, the Joker, and we're going to talk about Joker soon. Oh God, that is, again, it's a great story beat. It's a great story beat, and I think without Dent in it, again, you think you could maybe suggest this is slightly more. We could get rid of him, and it might be a little bit less complex, maybe. But I think it's so important. Dent is so important to this whole story.
It's the moral core of the movie, isn't it? And
it is,
and it's much more understandable. The plot of this movie is much more understandable than Batman Begins, which is why it's a better movie, because you kind of understand the stakes, you understand what each character's doing, and you understand the quote unquote mystery of the movie. Joker's machinations with the mob are very fun. I like the way the movie. Can we talk about the opening? Actually, let's start talking about the Joker. Fuck it. This movie is Heath Ledger's movie. Let's clear the runway. Is this one of the best openings to a movie? Like,
well, what do we say?
Cut the fucking first act. Take it in the back and shoot it in the head. Blow it up like you did Rachel in this movie.
Yeah, cut the first act, and I think they probably. I don't know if they do cut the first act, because what they do is they jump right into the middle of because the first act of this movie is kind of about how Batman's progressed. Like, that's kind of what we're getting into. And they could have got rid of some of that and maybe just said, he's got a new suit now, we're not going to see him in it. But so I don't necessarily think it is, but what we are doing with this opening scene is just giving the audience like a perfect taste of the flavors and the ingredients that we're going to be working with for the rest of the movie. You've got this beautiful, and I remember watching it in IMAX, this beautiful full frame IMAX shot that comes in, and they had this IMAX camera that was absolutely ridiculous. And if you notice, they don't film all of the movie in it, just a few scenes, and this is one of them where the full frame and the glass blows up and it's like straight in, and like what a fantastically constructed scene, if nothing else. The way that we see all the different perspectives and the masks and like all of this makes sense. We're not lost at any point, and it's so easy for this to be like, who is this? What's going on? But we don't care, because the answer.
You don't care because it's entertaining and the action is good, and it's a good heist. I think this is a great heist scene, and it's pretty well constructed and not stupid. I think there's a lot of heist. We've been treated to a lot of heists over the years, and not all of them created equally. And this is fun. It's a cool, like, each guy killing the guy behind him. It is fun, and they even kind of hang a lantern on the fact that the last guy kind of has. Of course, he's figured out, because 5 fucking people have been shot in the back of the head. Of course, he's figured out that someone's going to try and kill him as well. and they hang a lantern on that, and then it's revealed to be the Joker who's wearing this clown mask over his clown makeup, and that's our introduction to the Joker. I like how we don't get an origin story. I like how this is kind of just a fully formed character who appears in this movie. It's refreshing. I don't need the sub story about the Joker's backstory. Go and read a fucking comic book, loser. Like, well, we're here to watch a movie.
But they give us that. They give us that, don't they? In that the Joker tells two different versions of how he got his scars, and that in itself, like, we already get that unpredictable, this is the unreliable narrator kind of thing where he's narrating his own existence, and actually he'll just change it because he is pure chaos. Let's talk about this character. Like, I think, and then we can also obviously the performance. The Joker in the movies before is very, very, it's cartoonish, bad, but not necessarily evil. This is leaning on a lot more of the comic books, things like The Killing Joke, where
nerd.
I know. I haven't read a lot of comics, but I have read a few. And there's Batman year 1 maybe. Anyway, basically there's all these stories, and they kind of pull at different ones and use different elements of it. But this has got to be the most complete Joker. This has to be the most complete, well-formed Joker character in any movie. And I'm even going to say I think this is one of the best villains in cinema history, like that's shown in this movie. Like, I think it is. It's
certainly the best,
sublime.
I think, comic book villain, because, and kind of for the opposite reasons that I would usually. Obviously, if you're a regular listener, a lot of the time we kind of need to understand what a villain wants.
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand why the villain believes he's not a villain, and the Joker is kind of the inverse of that, the exception that breaks the rule. Where this is such a commanding and believable and effective villain, because it kind of, like, the whole point is that it doesn't want anything. It just wants chaos. And, there's that famous Michael Caine line, which also made me cringe a little bit when I heard it in the movie, because it's been repeated so much. Yeah. Some men just want to watch the world burn. While he's telling a weird story about when he was in Burma with the imperialists?
Part of the British imperialism in the 50s, presumably, like going around.
Interesting outing of yourself there.
Hey, Alfred? Let's trick these tribes into us getting oil rights. Yes, you don't want this. See this black oily stuff? Don't worry about that. That's fine. Would you like a valueless ruby? Here you go. Like, very strange, Alfred.
Don't worry, that story resolves in them burning the forest down, by the way. That story involves them. Anyway.
And rounding them up in concentration camps. 100%.
Alfred's war crimes aside,
you piece of shit.
I think it sums up the character quite well. And the Joker is such an effective villain because there is something quite scary about. Let's think of all, like, the big, really effective villains. You've got Alan Rickman in Die Hard, right? Really great villain, but he's a good villain because we understand what he wants, and he wants money. Of course, he wants money. We all want money, right? Some James Bond villains, you get kind of like megalomaniacs and evil, and they want control or power or to bomb China or whatever they're trying to do. Agent Smith in The Matrix. Exactly. Kind of like... But he wants a key thing. He wants to remove the fault in their code, which is Neo. He wants to remove these infiltrators, and that's kind of easy to understand. And even the Terminator, is a villain who, wants to kill this one person. It's very, because they've been programmed to, etc., etc. And because the Joker kind of just wants the chaos, and it crystallizes well throughout the movie that what the Joker develops into what the Joker really wants is to kind of prove to Batman that he's right, is to prove that everyone is a horrible shit and chaos, and the world's a nasty place full of nasty people who'll do nasty things to each other for no reason, which overridingly is true about humans. That's been borne out in, history. But that's the moral fight of this movie. Like you said earlier, like, it's the fight for the soul of Gotham, and it's kind of like Batman on the side of, no, ultimately people are good and they'll help each other, and there are bad people, but ultimately people are good. And the Joker is like, no, ultimately, like, man is evil and despicable, and here's all this evidence for that. And it's it's quite a compelling back and forth because there's like really good arguments on both sides.
Yeah, I think it kind of does work that the Joker has an ideology, and the ideology is that, like basically chaos is where we should go and anarchy, and we shouldn't, the social conditions and structures aren't the way to do things, and at the same time kind of doesn't really believe that too, because he's, I think, just exploiting this argument, because you're right, he wants to prove that the way Batman thinks is wrong. As a bit of criticism of the movie, I don't necessarily think that Batman really encompasses the opposite of what the Joker is setting out. I don't think that the Batman that exists here particularly is offers a particularly good counter narrative that people are good and that society, when we come together, that human beings can achieve amazing things, because that is the history of society. As much as the Joker might, and nihilists might say, actually, people look out for themselves. Nope, because otherwise we would all died. Like, families and culture and society, things that bind us together, is why human beings are so fucking successful. And so I don't hear that coming from Batman in this movie. I hear it coming from the things that happen, kind of like, oh, we didn't blow up 10,000 people on the boat. But I do think that the Joker's attempt to kind of to make the world burn, because he is just this nihilistic, crazy, if a dog chasing a car, I wouldn't know what to do if I caught it. That lands as well as I think you could possibly get it to. I think I will say, actually, I do think there is a high-mindedness to Batman in these movies. And we hear it in the last movie, that Batman wants to be a symbol of hope for Gotham. Mm-hmm. He's not... And I think that's where I'm getting at in terms of the polar opposite of the Joker, is that he wants to be a symbol of hope to inspire the people of Gotham, which he does in this movie, and they get murdered horribly. Like a symbol of hope that the people of Gotham can stand up to the mobsters and the criminals and the psychotic people and say, no, actually, I just want to raise my family in peace. And that's certainly a through line, certainly in Batman Begins and in this movie, of like, actually, no, people are capable of coming together and being magnanimous and, being altruistic, and the whole reason for Batman existing is to kind of like be the match that starts the fire of people standing up and saying, no, this is our city and we won't have this, that and the other. And it's exacerbated more, I think, in contrast to the Joker in this movie. The Joker's driving a lot of that. He's driving the chaos and the negativity, but I think it's the fact. The representative example is that when the grumpy guy on the non-convict, on the non-prisoner boat stands up and says, "Fine, I'll do it. I'll blow everyone up."
You mean this guy who doesn't have the balls to blow up 10,000 people? What a pussy!
I know. Well, that's kind of what the movie says, isn't it? It isn't. We don't get from the quote unquote good guys who aren't prisoners. We don't get the moment where he just doesn't have the guts to do it, and that's kind of the attitude. Whereas the right thing gets done by the prisoners, and so there is like we're kind of hinting at maybe actually the moral systems.
It's a bit blunt, but yeah, it's kind of like getting at the moral grey areas of this guy's a murderer, but he has
not going to murder.
He has the moral fortitude to say, I may have killed one person for reasons, however, I'm not going to blow up 10,000 people, even if that would mean that we didn't get blown up.
Yeah, and I think that there is that sort of we're trying, but I don't think the movie necessarily lands that perfectly. Let's talk about Heath Ledger. Let's talk about this performance. I think. I mean,
this guy's got a real career in front of him. Yeah.
Dear. That's a very bad taste joke. It's
been 18 years, 16 years, Sam. It's fine.
But I think it's one of those performances that is a landmark, and we were talking recently about Matt Damon, unrelated to this movie.
Matt Damon.
What we were saying is that I don't think I was arguing, we can get into this in another episode. I was arguing I don't think he's necessarily had like one of those landmark performances that puts you.
Is this an argument we had on the podcast, or is this an argument we had off the podcast? It's all blending together for me.
I know. I don't want to get into it, but he hasn't. I think this is what I'm talking about. This is a performance where you can pin it down and say, "Holy shit!" Because we've seen Heath Ledger before. He was in 10 Things I Hate About You, which was a previous episode. I think a really good actor, and it's obviously very tragic what happened to him, and I think this is one of those performances though that's going to be remembered forever. Like this is an insane commitment physically, and the way that he embodies, I think, the chaos so naturally that you don't really think about it. You don't really think about the performance, and that's hard to really blow it. To really blow this would be for us to be going, this is a guy in makeup, and he's not. You don't think about it, and that's
it would
clever.
be Jack Nicholson levels, yeah.
Yeah, going, oh look, it's that guy. You know what I mean? And that would be the kind of end point. So it's
a very singular performance, and it's obviously Heath Ledger's death is really tragic, and but I also think it's kind of like it's cemented this performance. I think in a way that naturally because we never got another Heath Ledger performance. He died the year this movie came out. I think he might have even died before the premiere. I can't remember.
Close enough, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like it lends kind of a morbid aspect to this role and this performance, kind of like The Crow, actually, the Brandon Lee movie, where it just makes it a little bit weird. I think it's an excellent performance. He was only 28 when they filmed this, which is absolutely baffling.
Which is mad, isn't it?
And that's the big thing. I think if he'd been 60, then we maybe wouldn't look at his death in the same like, oh my God, we were robbed of decades of this guy's career, and he was a really, really good actor with an excellent range, and this movie kind of proves it. I think all of his roles before this are much more kind of like just a handsome white man. He's tall and attractive, and whereas this is kind of the opposite of that. I think there's only even one shot where he's not wearing the clown makeup when he tries to assassinate Gordon or the mayor or somebody.
Yeah.
Well, he's still got the makeup on, the scar makeup, but he's out of makeup, and that shot especially, I was like, God, this guy was young. But it's a role he inhabits, and it's kind of hard to imagine any other actor pulling this off with the same level of pathos and kind of like commitment to the role, because it's quite a funny performance. It's not funny ha-ha, but there's a comedic aspect to it where, he blows the hospital up, and the way that he moves around, and he's kind of
in
having
the nurse's
fun.
dress, and and it doesn't quite blow up, and he's tapping the thing, and then gets on. Yeah, there's loads of lightness, and there's
a comedic way in which the Joker moves around the set of these shots and kind of inhabits this role. And
can I show you a magic?
It's so hard to explain because I think it's so nuanced.
Yes. And I think if it's one of those things, if you swing one way or another, if you go more serious, then it becomes maybe too scary, or if you go less serious, then it's Jack Nicholson and in clown makeup, and we're not really taking it seriously. I think the real test is that the other bad guys in this franchise aren't particularly good. I think the Scarecrow is the closest one to me that gets somewhere. But then they don't
good,
really
but underused. I would say.
They
the
don't.
Scarecrow has a lot of limelight stolen by famed racist Liam Neeson.
By Ra's al Ghul, and then Bane's all right.
No, Bane is bad. It's bad. It's a bad movie. It's a bad character.
It's so I think this really shows, I think, where we're at, and it goes to my point that the Joker is one of the best villains, if not the best villain. No, it's not the best, but one of the best villains in cinema history, and really, I think, is so well conceived here that you can't.
I think it's a really good. It's a really good. What's the word? It's a really good portrayal of the character. And again, I've not read tons of the comics because while I am a fucking loser, I'm not exactly that flavour of loser.
Yeah. In a different.
Yeah, I'm reading history books like an even bigger loser rather than reading comic books. Yeah. I do wash more often, perhaps. Now,
debatable.
Yeah, we'll see. When smells come to the internet, we'll all find out. My God.
Oh, Jesus, I think
every podcast will be bankrupt. Now, what I mean is that this is a really good portrayal of the Joker in that it captures kind of like some of the chaos and some of the... It's a clown, and the fact that Joker's a clown, I think, is forgotten in a lot of the portrayals where, you know, the Jack Nicholson one, for instance, he's kind of not as crazy. He's a mobster who, for unknown reasons, starts wearing clown makeup, whereas this is, you know...
And they call that out, don't they? They call that out in this movie. They're like, "Oh, it's some psycho where it puts makeup on," like, and it's all just part of the, you know, and it's scary at points. I feel like there's not maybe enough, but the bit where Heath Ledger's recording the video of the Batman lookalike, you know, the vigilante guy who's not Batman, he's dressed up in hockey gear, and that scene is fucking. I think it's the way that because it's handheld video camera, look at me, and all this stuff is like, wow. In an
era where we'd all grown up watching like hostage videos from Bush's oil wars, like
from Iraq.
Yeah, like, it felt very real in 2008. And yeah, certainly.
And there's lots of that. There's lots of that through the movie. I think where we really get to. It's not overdone because we do get the lightness, but it's dropped in a way that's very impactful, and that I think is the skill. I would say. To move us on from the Joker now, I would say that this is it's quite a long movie, and
very long, 2 hours 40.
152 minutes, so you can do the maths,
something like
listener. That. It's there are segments. I think they discussed in watching some of the making of. They discussed elements where they were like they created a version of this that was a lot shorter, and they basically ended up saying we can't. It's a bit incomprehensible. The plot doesn't really make sense without having the kind of. So I think I struggle to see necessarily which bits I might want to get rid of, but there are story beats in this that are a bit.
I know which bits.
Well, go on then. Let's see. If we're the same.
Can we write Lucius Fox out of these fucking movies?
Oh. Perfect. Specifically, the guy who is trying to blackmail him. This little bloody.
What does it add to the movie?
It's weird, isn't it? And I think that's the only thing that I think it adds is like it adds things for Bruce Wayne to do because he gets to be like I was just trying to get through the light when the car, you know.
What do you think that is? Do you think that's like Christian Bale contractually wanted people to realise that he was in this movie?
To have, I think maybe, but there are elements like that I think we could maybe get rid of and just give it, because I think it is. I wasn't bored at any point, but there are points where I think movie we're really picking up a real head of steam here. You know, we are pushing faster and faster. We're rolling down this hill.
No, wait, Sam. We have to derail the movie so we can have a joke about Alfred rubbing tanning oil into the fucking the Russian ballet.
Yeah.
We talked about this last movie, right? Why isn't Batman clever? Batman does do a little bit of investigating in this movie, which was good. But Batman and Bruce Wayne are quite fucking stupid. Like, you're gonna... So, Sam, let me lay this out for you, right? 4 reasons you need to invade the sovereignty of China, a country that's famously chill about people invading its sovereignty, right? And you're going to go into China and kidnap a Chinese national, right? Start a gunfight. The police are going to be called out. In Hong Kong, of all places. Famously, China's chill in Hong Kong in 2008. And to do that, you're going to get on a boat with the entire of this Russian opera or whatever it is.
The ballet. Yeah.
And you're going to leave your octogenarian butler dad to entertain these women, while you quite obviously have a massive cargo plane land next to the boat with 20 women on it, and swim out to it is you, the billionaire, the same night that this Chinese foreign national is kidnapped by Batman. Are you telling me that the Russian ballet are so stupid that they don't put two and two together and think, I wonder where that guy went. Like when we were on the boat. Did you see the news? There was this like Chinese Batman was there. Wait. Weren't we with a guy from Gotham? Do you think there's something going on there?
I think maybe the movie is fuck you, shut up, is what it's saying, but also maybe ballerinas aren't like that keen on the news.
It's a fun scene, it's a cool scene. I do think it's a bit of like a flex, like, Batman's got Bruce Wayne's got to prove he's got the biggest billionaire dick. He's going to invade China. Like, okay, for reasons.
But it does. It's one of those elements of the movie that we could maybe like how we get from point. What do we want to see? We want to see the Joker fucking about. How do we get there? Well, we've got all of the mob, and somehow they've agreed to let this guy, this one person, pull it all into one bank account. What could go wrong? Like diversify. And so then we're going to have we are many steps to get to the point where he needs to use.
And I will credit the movie that all of that's like, apart from how stupid it is, all of the actual steps are quite well defined.
It's all well constructed, but I think what we're maybe getting at is that there are perhaps there are simpler ways of us needing this person to be captured. What I think was happened is that they need Lucius Fox to do something, and so they bring in this scene where he can say,
Morgan Freeman wants to put another wing on his fucking house.
Yeah, we developed, we're using this technology with the balloon technology stuff, which is very cool, the Skyhook thing that manages. Like, it's all cool. Don't get me wrong, I thought that was pretty impressive, but at the same time, we could maybe, because again, Lucius Fox flies over there, and we're like, and he says, this could have been a phone call. Yeah, you're right. Fucking right, movie. It could have been a phone call. We could have just saved ourselves.
Again, talking about cutting some time out of this movie, I think they kept it because it's quite a lot of expensive, cool-looking stunts, and they obviously liked it. They liked the set piece, but I think of all the things that are happening in the movie, for vast portions of it, Batman isn't on the screen. For vast portions of it, the Joker isn't on the screen. Like. Yeah. Get to the movie. Get back to the movie. Please, can we get back to the movie?
Yeah. Because even the conclusion, even the ending with Fox and his, what at the time seemed outrageous, but actually we learned was just exactly what was happening with the hacking of all of our.
But again, take it out of the movie and what changes? Like
nothing.
We know where the Joker is because reasons. Someone just comes into the room and says he's blah, 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 blah.
He's at the
great. Let's go and get him.
He's at the Pruitt Building. Great. We go to the Pruitt Building and there he is. Like,
or maybe Batman solves a clue. Maybe Batman has the thing.
Well, we do get
it says Pruitt Building on this receipt. Maybe he's gone to the Pruitt Building.
We do get that though, don't we? Because we get, but it's through the technology. He reconstructs the bullet shot, and again, it's sciencey and technobabble, but it's cool, and that is a criticism. To be fair to the movie that we did lay on Batman Begins is that we don't really get the detective part of it because Batman is,
and we do get a bit of that, yeah.
A detective, isn't it? That's
I can't remember what the bullet thing tells us, but I do remember the.
I don't know something
exactly, and I'm asking you, and you're even less likely to know than I am.
Yeah. So. What I would say though is that there is stuff we could get rid of, but I think this is a really well constructed, edited movie. Like the editing pulls us, drags us along in certain parts, and in a more positive sense, I think really just sets us up like it is tack sharp. We see that in the opening. We see that in the way that we're moving constantly, and we get we get a really decent pace, and the kind of ups and downs, the A plots, the B plots draw together in a wonderful way. And this is a beautiful movie in certain parts. Considering
it's very well shot. It's a little lighter than the last movie. They obviously took the notes of there's a lot more light. A lot more of this movie takes place during the day, which is nice because you can see what's going on and. It kind of allows you to have more complex cinematography, I think.
What Wally Pfister did this, and he did Batman Begins, Prestige, Dark Knight, Inception, and then came back for Dark Knight Rises.
Oh, so he's one of Nolan's bros.
Yes, he did Insomnia as well, I think, and Memento. So he's but not Oppenheimer, and which is interesting. But
shit.
Yeah, he's still alive. That's good. and I think that's
Nolan didn't have him killed, thank God.
Yeah, but you were saying earlier about the prestige in this. I think you do see some of you see that real sense of the way that the camera is used in this. There are some really interesting, like the bit where Bruce Wayne's in the Lamborghini, and in real life the camera got hit, and they keep it in, and you see the little swerve. There's also a couple of shots where you can see when he gets on the school bus, you can see the camera there in the back, all covered up in a sheet, and obviously they're filming the Heath Ledger close-up reaction shot. And there's all these things that actually I kind of like. I kind of like that this feels like a movie. It doesn't feel really clean. It feels like quite a rough and ready kind of presentation. Not everything is dead clear all the time. You know, all the fighting isn't really. It's a bit of a blur, but it's on that right, nice kind of.
It's good. It's visually quite entertaining. And again, not to keep attacking the third movie. God, we're going to have to eventually do that. I'm going to hate it again. I think the third movie leans much more on the bombastic, like CGI, and so much of the movie, because I'm sure you remember, they basically blow up Gotham, and so much of the movie therefore is like CGI renderings of this destroyed city. Whereas this, we've got a lot of location shooting. I can't remember which city they actually shot a lot of this in, but we've got a lot of location shooting, a lot of real city blocks, a lot of real streets, buildings. The hospital they blew up was a real hospital, was it? It was a real building they blew up?
A real building, at least, yeah.
Well, there was being demolished, I think.
That they blew which is up. Great, isn't it? Hey, we'll do it for you, and we'll make it look cool, which I think is a pretty cool...
Well, you get one shot of that, that's it.
Yeah, with your principal actor, one of your principal actors, walking next to the explosions, like it's impressive, and I think so much is sometimes lost of just how difficult it is to do some of this stuff, like to blow up a building with one of your actors there, and to make it safe, and to have it, you know, if you've got one take on this, if you get it wrong, then it's all good. Like, this is not easy to do. It's not easy to do some of this stuff. I think it really goes to just the general professionalism that you see, and that bears out on screen. It bears out on screen, and so much of the movie is really, I think, like a result of all of these individual parts.
Yeah,
and the vision's there, and the direction's there, but really you need a lot. You know, the fight choreography, for example, like this is hard stuff. And to make it look
and I like the fight choreography here because, again, we've learned our lessons from Batman Begins. No one's fucking having katana fights through burning buildings because it's too much. Like,
yeah,
the fights are cool. It's kind of like Splinter Cell. The China scene especially is Batman rappelling down the side of a building, and that's cool. And smashing the window, and he's disappearing and reappearing, and he's just like incapacitating these guys, which is cool. You know, later on when we have the Joker, is quite. I think there's a physicality to his fights that are quite like interesting to watch, but it's not a kung fu movie. It's not what the movie's about. It's more kind of like a means to convey to us that, like, you know,
yeah, the interrogation scene is a brilliant example, I think, of where we bring all these things together. You know, where it feels so physical, and I think a lot of that's the sound effects, the Foley, and everything that goes along with it. But if you don't have, I think, the actors confidently leaning into what they're doing, I think you could suffer, and you could end up in not feeling. But it feels so grounded. It feels so minimal as well. Like, we're not having these Marvel Cinematic Universe style punch fights where it's levels of, you know, power scaling, all this other stuff that you get. It's just like, it's great, and it's brutal. The bit where he's got the Joker's got the knife in, I think it's maybe Gambit's mouth, and he's, you know, we don't see it, but we get this great we get the sound, and we get this musical score. Let's talk about the music for a second. Hans Zimmer gets a little bit of stick, I think, for maybe not being as nuanced in the world of movie scores as perhaps he might be. And I think sometimes, sometimes the very kind of modern sounding stuff, I think, can struggle a little bit. The Inception brown is a good example of where I think that's kind of been taking the piss off a little bit now, because it's a little bit obvious and like, okay, we get the point. But and the way that the ticking clock is always, is 1 second. All this stuff is a little bit all right, but I think this is a really good score that's actually quite subtle in places. Obviously, you get the Joker electric guitar, that escalates, but there's good, like nice, that all that stuff is really, I think, carefully done, and the score adds a lot to this movie in a way that
it's really competent, I think, and I think it underlines a lot of the more important scenes, and it adds well to the tension. I'm not going to call it workmanlike, because I do think it is better than that. I think this is a good score that complements the movie really, really well. But you are right, it's not the Lord of the Rings. It doesn't give you the scope to have kind of like a no. You can't get away with that in this movie because it takes place in this much more grounded universe. So it's kind of more akin maybe to an action movie score than it is to something like a fantasy score like that. But I think it's really competent. I think Hans Zimmer generally is really, really good. I just think that perhaps he's accused of being a bit more muted than some of his contemporaries.
Good example of that is the Interstellar soundtrack, which there are moments of real loveliness. But if you listen to it as music, it's quite, I don't know, I struggle to engage with it. And it's not necessarily that it's because I quite like electronic music and all that stuff. It's just really like, okay, where's the musicality? Where are the what are you telling me that? And
it's more cinematic than that, though, isn't it?
It's connected to what's on screen, and that's where I think he struggles a little bit. But I think probably he manages it in this, and you do get the kind of musicality. You don't get the leitmotifs, which is you get the Fellowship theme and you get the Boromir theme. You don't get that in a lot of his movies, but I think it hints at a little bit more here.
But I think in a movie like this is much more suited to a Hans Zimmer type score, because it's kind of like about those shades of grey. Yeah, and I think I've never like sat and listened to the Dark Knight soundtrack. I'll sit and listen to the Tron Legacy soundtrack. I'll sit and listen to Star Wars soundtracks. I'll sit and listen to Lord of the Rings soundtracks. I'm not listening to this soundtrack, just like I'm not listening to the soundtrack of Phone Booth. Not because either of them are bad, but it's just a good pull for like a really competent and well-suited score, but not good music on its own. And I think there's place for both.
Who did the music for Phone Booth that you are terribly? Music by Harry Gregson Williams, who did the score of the Metal Gear series, Spy Game, Phone Booth, Man on Fire, Narnia. Wow, he's Shrek franchise. This guy is working, and you are just shitting all over him.
No, I'm really not. I'm really not. What I'm saying is that it's a different type of score.
I know, I'm going to check it.
And it's kind of like I said, I think it's the grounded nature of this movie. If this was a more fantastical Batman movie, I haven't done the research, but the modern The Batman, the newer one, might have a more, more traditional score that's potentially better suited to a soundtrack. But I can't say that with any certainty. Certainly, a lot of those Marvel movies do lean more heavily on having more of a, like you say, like themes for different characters and different places and different vibes throughout the movie, which this is lacking.
Yeah, interesting. Oh, look at that.
But I don't think the movie suffers for it.
No, look at us talking about scores in movies like we know what we're talking
Sounded
about.
like complete morons. Yes, I'm very comfortable in that space because I am a complete moron.
To us. Honourable mention. I think we've kind of dug through this. I think Christian Bale has an enormous amount of work to do in this movie, and I think he because he's behind a mask, and because a lot of it is him being smarmy as Bruce Wayne, which is not that difficult to do, is it really? But I think actually, when you look at the emotional baggage and weight that he has to lift, I think it is substantial. I think without someone who, I think, and we said this about him in Batman Begins as well, like, you've got to really, really sell this Batman character. Like, you can't have a George Clooney-esque performance. In the same way that I think you need Robert Downey Jr. to be Iron Man, and now Doctor Doom for some reason. Well, anyway, like, you're gonna have a main character who needs to embody a heck of a lot and needs to do a heck of a lot and is on screen a heck of a lot, and it's hard to think of other actors who could maybe.
It's a weird one, isn't it? Because I think you're asking a really talented actor. Good for you. You're asking a really talented actor to come in here and kind of like headline the movie, and then in this movie you're kind of asking him to play second fiddle to Heath Ledger. I think, certainly in the bombastic nature of the role, and it's interesting that this might be. There's a conversation to be had. This might well be the best movie that Christian Bale is in, but it's not the best Christian Bale movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he's got like 3 or 4 much better, much more signature performances in other movies.
Yeah.
Even though this might be the best start to finish, movie he's been in.
I'm
not saying that definitively because I haven't looked at it, but
I think it's a reasonable assertion. But I think it definitely goes to, like, you need someone who can carry this, but it's also quite understated, and you can't pull focus. You need to be able to be. The presence I think he brings, and less so with the Bruce Wayne character, but it's still there. But to do all this physicality in the suit and to look, all of that is difficult. And I think it's just like we said with Batman Begins. He's doing a good job. He's doing a good job with it, and that's important, isn't it? When your movie's about this. Like,
it's a difficult role
generic.
Because when you're Batman, there is an argument to be made that anyone could do that part of the. You're in the mask, like anyone can do a bit of acting with their chin. It's not as nuanced. The voice is quite silly, and so maybe that's why, like we've said, there's a lot more Bruce Wayne scenes in this movie than I think they desperately 100% needed, and that's maybe explained by, like, we've got Christian Bale here, he's really good, let's give him an opportunity to actually do some acting. So it's kind of tough to argue, and again, Heath Ledger's performance and Eckhart as well, like, and Gyllenhaal, like, you've got a lot of really good performances. You might notice I haven't mentioned Gary Oldman because I don't think he's fantastic in any of these movies, even though I think he's a fantastic actor. But, like,
Mark Beals, his accent completely falls apart several times in this movie, mate. Like,
exactly.
What are we doing, dude? Was it not a better take than that?
But what I'm saying is that aside from Oldman, I think you've got some really, really stellar actors in this movie putting up really, really solid, nuanced, like, dedicated performances, and Bale, perhaps in the hindsight of 16 years, comes across as maybe not doing as much, just because the role that he's playing is a bit more muted and a bit more secondary to Heath Ledger, to Two-Face, and he doesn't get the high highs that those characters get. But yeah, I think it's a solid performance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is definitely Gary Oldman's, like, these 3 movies paid for all the indie movies he's good in.
Yeah, I think it's slightly harsh, but
no, he's not. He's fine.
I get where you're coming from
in these movies, but he wasn't great in the last movie, and he's not fantastic or have a lot to do in this movie.
Yeah. Final thing for me then. It's just, and I think because in a lot of ways, the best part of this movie is left hanging. Not on a cliff necessarily, but not far off. And I think one of the great choices of this movie is that we finish the film with our best character, the most interesting character, hanging upside down, cackling to himself. He's not killed. He doesn't have some amazing death. Like, the movie has a heck of a lot of restraint in a lot of ways to say, actually, we're just going to leave him here, and then we're going to, we've talked about the ending already, but like, I think that sums up this movie for me. It sums up that there's a lot here where we could take stuff out, maybe, to just get to the money a little bit more. But really, we are shown, they show a massive amount of restraint and control to present us with a film that is tight, that moves, that is morally and thematically really kind of concise and clear. And the result is, I think, the best superhero movie ever, maybe? Question mark? Upwards inflection?
All right, let's take 90 seconds. Name a better one.
I mean, it's really hard, isn't it?
Guardians?
No. Doesn't have the weight. Doesn't have the weight of this. Doesn't have the thematic weight. I can't think
Is
of
this
one.
better or worse than Lego Batman?
I mean, I don't think there's a comparison. I think it's much better in many ways. But it's also different kettles of fish. I don't think, this is what I'm saying, I don't think there is. I think this is the best superhero movie ever made. And
there's an interesting conversation to be had there, because I think it's a very it's a very small amount of movies that maybe superhero movies especially that maybe reach this level. There's an argument that Iron Man was the more influential movie, just based on.
But I'm not talking influential. I'm talking that is serious, that it delivers, that is powerful, and ties all that up in a really nice package. I don't think there is a better.
Obviously, Sam, the answer is Green Lantern. I can't believe it hadn't occurred to me before.
The second Aquaman movie.
You are absolutely right, because so many of these movies fucking suck.
Yeah, they do. Because if you don't have all of the elements that we're talking about, if you miss one, then there's a big gap, isn't there? There's a big gap if you miss. So I think we leave it open. I think we can maybe carry on our exploration of superhero movies, but I think we're going to struggle to reach anything that kind of gets to this level. And I think there's, not for a lack of trying, movie industry, not for a lack of goddamn trying. Like, good Lord, give us a break.
It's funny, isn't it?
Good for you.
This might be the best superhero movie ever made, but like the competition is fierce for the worst. Like that's a much more competitive class.
Jesus. Well, I think we should do the opposite of this. We should do what we're
I will not watch Catwoman again. I won't do it.
Any of the DC movies other than this one. I mean, I don't.
I refuse to believe Aquaman is good.
We've already done Spider-Man 3. That's already up there. Like,
any of the Fantastic Four movies actually are very, very poor. Any of them. Pick one.
Yeah, any of them. So I'm going to stand by my statement, and I think we just need to figure out how we're going to dive into superheroes next. Fantastic Four, I think that's what we need to do. Well, we biffed the ending there, Dave, I think. So I'm going to suggest that we maybe try that again.
Why? What's the problem?
Oh, I thought you were. I thought you were going to respond.
I didn't want to spray snot all over my microphone.
Right,
Apologies.
Okay. That's fine.
All right, let's go again. What do you want to do? Just redo the.
Where we left off there.
I've got it.
No, don't worry, because the music's not going to sync up.
It's fine, Sam. They don't all have to be like.
All right. That's fine.
Just find a point. Just pick a point where we say like, "Oh, I'm not going to watch Catwoman again," and then whatever fucking cutesy shit you said, and just cut. And
I'll just do that.
Or just no. I tell you what. Just put in "Good for you." Like just put that. Just that little soundbite. Fair use. Right at the end.
Good for you.
Bang. Good for you.
Oh, great. Good for you.
That's it. That's the one.
That's